There are tons of different unique Digimon within the card game ever since it was released. With well over 2,000 cards, we got some that are fan favorites ranging from Omnimon, Imperialdramon, Jesmon, Mastermon, and so much more. However, there are some cards and decks that are often left out which barely see any competitive representation, yet alone even played as they have been lost deep within the bulk. Today, we're going to explore some of these cards and archetypes and talk about them. Welcome back to another new episode of the Why Nobody Plays series featuring Dandevimon. First things first, I just wanted to clarify that the Why Nobody Plays series doesn't necessarily mean that absolutely no one plays the decks or the cards. I'm very sure that some of you guys who are watching right now do have some of these decks made just for in-house casual games. At the end of the day, all of this is just very subjective, as this series is just really trying to highlight why some of these cards or decks are barely seeing play even at local tournament levels. These kinds of videos are not intended to shame on the deck or fans of the Digimon, but rather as an opportunity to critically analyze what didn't work well and what areas of improvements can be made to make it better. Whether these decks are just not performing consistently or certain cards being lost with its goal and identity, I think this would be a really cool segue to get the conversation going. In every episode, I will cover key cards of the deck and the win condition that it's trying to accomplish, but where it also misses the mark. I would also include some of my own opinions on what changes that I would personally make to improve the playability. And for today's episode, we'll be covering Dandevimon and its Devimon Digivolution line. If you guys enjoyed discussion videos like these on the channel, then be sure to subscribe and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned for more. Also give this video a like while you're at it, as I greatly appreciate the support from all of you, so thank you guys so much. To begin, let's take a trip back to 2021, where BT4 Great Legend was released in the English version for the card game. This is exactly where Dandevimon was first introduced, and the card also came with an alternative artwork card which looks super cool, pretty much like Venom from the Spider-Man universe. It was also reprinted in Event Pack 1 with another really cool looking avatar as well. Dandevimon is a level 6 purple Digimon. It costs 4 memory for you to digivolve and has 12,000 DP, containing 2 separate effects. The first effect is that when a card is removed from your security stack, trash the top card of your opponent's security stack once per turn. The second effect is that on deletion, your opponent trashes 2 cards in their hand, of their choice. Both these effects are fairly good during the time when it first debuted. It has a unique way of control and forces opponents to play slower at the same time. Trashing cards from the opponent's hand was considered to be fairly new at the time, but there's one more card that made it even better, which was the release of the promo Devimon P034. So let's take a look at what it does along with all the other cards within the archetype. The promo Devimon P034 came out from the Great Legend Power Up Pack, which you can get along with the purchase of a Great Legend booster box. It has an inherited effect with on deletion, if you have 7 or more Digimon cards with Devimon in their name in your trash, you may play one Dandevimon from your trash without paying its memory cost. This effect directly supports Dandevimon, and the combination of both these cards is to open up a new opportunity to play the Devimon deck by combining all related cards together. There's also another promo Devimon, which is P017, and that came out way before this other promo Devimon, and that is exclusively only available from the official Tournament Pack Volume 1. It has an on-play effect that trashes the top 2 cards of your deck, and it greatly helps with the potential of adding more Devimon names into the trash. Moving on to the main cards of the level 4 line, there are quite a few Devimons to talk about. The first one that are seen most commonly played include the BT2 Devimon, which has the retaliation effect, making it very good for trading against the opponent's Digimon. It also provides the retaliation with its inherited effect as well. This card was also reprinted with a fantastic alt art within the first year anniversary promo pack, which you get alongside when purchasing a BT6 Double Diamond booster box. There's also the Blocker Devimon, which came out from Starter Deck 6, Venomous Violet. This card was reprinted several times with various alt art cards since many purple decks play it in the early days. It is pretty much considered as a staple, and that is because of its low digivolve cost of 1 and helps purple decks climb through the Digivolution stack quicker. For the main level 5s, there are 2 kinds of Lady Devimon. The first one is from BT3, which draws and trashes cards when digivolving. This card was so good as it was pretty much considered to be one of the best purple staple Digimon cards for many other purple decks for the longest time. It also got an alt-art treatment in the form of Official Tournament Pack Volume 4 as well. And as for the other Lady Devimon from EX1, it simply trashes cards from the top of the deck when it's digivolving instead. There's also Neo Devimon from BT4, and it got an alt-art from the Regionals 2022 May to July Participation Set 1. This card is more of a tech against decks that mainly rely on tamers with effects to gain memory whenever your opponent plays a tamer. And for its inheritable effect is that when an opponent's tamer becomes suspended, you also gain a memory. Overall, these are many different Devimon related cards that you can play as the arsenal continues to grow bigger and bigger, giving the archetype tons of possibilities. We have seen several attempts with the community trying to make Dandevimon work, and there are a couple of different lists that had successes, as I will go through a couple of them together. During BT4, there are several unique builds used to support the main Dandevimon strategy. The first one is being the Dandevimon deck with the Plutomon as an alternative level 6 boss Digimon. It gives a ton of draw power and opportunity to use a purple option card with 6 or less cost for free, which would mainly be either Heat Viper or Hell's Gate as a main removal tool. There was also the Anubismon package, which intends to help you play Digimon back from the trash to utilize its rush capability of its second effect to make surprise attacks with Night Raid as well. There was also the BT3 Malomyotismon package, intended to be played with Arukenimon and Mummymon so that it can be played from either the hand or trash. Malomyotismon's effect is to gain additional memory during all turns when another Digimon is deleted. This can be best utilized to make more plays during your turn or to disrupt your opponents during theirs. The BT4 format enabled various fun methods for players to build the deck through the application of different packages where the Dandevimon can adopt. As for the Chaos Gallantmon build, which debuted during BT5, delivered a very cool dynamic and synergy with the entire archetype. There were tons of tools of control, aggression, and even more removal thanks to the purple support it got during then. This also gave the deck a ton of flexibility with combos and plays, and not to mention, it even topped off with the two best Omnimons during that time, which included Zwart and Zwart Defeat. Other than that, Dandevimon was also seen to be played in various security control decks here and there, which was a complete nightmare for other opponents and decks to deal with, especially when it was hard played in the early stages of the game. Unfortunately, after the BT5 format, Dandevimon has barely made any appearances since it couldn't keep up with the meta as it advanced to a faster and faster state. But what is exactly preventing it from being successful at the moment? There seems to be barely any presence, especially when it comes to putting the archetype together into a deck anymore. And this is where we'll take a look at the issues. So to begin with the very first problem, which correlates to what I was trying to say with the archetype having so many different cards, but having all those different cards currently doesn't necessarily mean they were designed to synergize with each other and Dandevimon's game plan to be specific. And it is quite evidential that all the other effects are just relatively generic. As a matter of fact, the only card that was really made to directly support Dandevimon is the Demidevimon P034. Now speaking of promo cards, itself was a major issue and contributor to why many people didn't play the deck. Both promo Demidevimon are relatively hard to get, particularly the one from Tournament Pack 1, and it was incredibly pricey during the time. Having limited access to some of the most important cards makes it much more difficult to build the deck. It then leads to less players playing the deck, and that also leads to less representation, and from the past, causing it to miss out the best moment it could ever have. The good news though is that we're going to be getting the Tournament Pack 1 Demidevimon reprinted in the upcoming reprint set RB01 Resurgence Booster. But even so, the deck has long passed its prime compared to when it first came out. And just like I mentioned, it is just way too slow for it to set up its core combos, especially compared to the modern day of the meta with its speed. Because the main gameplay revolves on having 7 Devimons in trash, there are not enough effects built into the archetype that helps and turbo to facilitate for this particular effect. No new level 6s were released so far during the time of making this video, and I'm hoping we're going to be getting some soon as well. The level 5s got power crept and not even meta relevant anymore. And the level 4s don't really have much good effects that actually help support the archetype either. There are no dedicated tamers or options that can accelerate the goal of helping you get into Dandevimon. As Dandevimon is the primary win condition alone, it's just not enough to help win games. Even though the card alone is pretty good when you're able to play it in the early stages of the games, as it can counter pressure against the opponents by trashing their security whenever one of yours is removed. But keep in mind, this effect is only once per turn, meaning that many decks can do multiple damage nowadays, which offsets the trade value against a player that controls Dandevimon. The archetype lacks offensive power and doesn't really have a precise win condition, which is probably one of its biggest weakness and aspects of its deficiency. We can clearly see that the weaknesses of this deck are fairly obvious. However, this does not necessarily mean that the deck has no potential. As a matter of fact, it is very possible for it to evolve into something way greater and better than it currently is. One of the most notable factors for improvement for the archetype is that it can become really good naturally upon with more Devimon cards being brought into the game and introduced as newer forms. There are also 2 new cards that support Devimon in the upcoming BT14 Blast Day set. It introduces a new Devimon which has a relatively interesting stat with a play cost of 7, which is pretty high for a level 4 Digimon. It has 6000 DP, which isn't really high, but it comes with quite a few effects. First is that on play and when attacking, trash the top 3 cards of your deck, and this is absolutely fantastic because it can help you potentially add more Devimons into the trash, which we talked about that the deck was kind of lacking in the beginning. Its second effect is your turn, this Digimon gets extra 1000 DP for every 3 cards in your trash, meaning it can get stronger and stronger, which is really nice because it reflects the lore of the anime when it grew larger. And last but not least, its last effect is on deletion, trash 1 random card from your opponent's hand, which is really great because it does relate to what Dandevimon is intended to do. There's also a new option card, which trashes the top 3 cards of your deck, and then one of your Digimon with Devimon in its name gets security +1 for the turn. And the security effect activates its main effect, which seems slightly odd since you wouldn't be able to utilize the security +1 effect other than just trashing top 3 cards of your deck after. It is quite noticeable that the main implication of these cards is to trash more cards from the top of the deck, which can potentially have some synergy with all the other current cards to speed up the process of the game plan. However, this isn't quite enough as the deck still requires a bit more to make it better than it currently is. Judging from the trend of future product releases, it is possible to imagine that we will be getting even more Devimon support in the BT15 set since it seems to be reintroducing the characters from the original Digimon Adventure series. This means we can expect a new Lady Devimon, Neo Devimon, or even a Dandevimon itself as well. And that will be really exciting to see. One of the biggest improvements that the deck really needs are effects that trashes cards from either the hand or top of the deck for all Digimon cards that have Devimon in its name, similar to the effect of Lady Devimon. These effects don't necessarily need to be when digivolving for the archetype specifically because it will just cause a bit of redundancy when it comes to the purple style of decks with all the other archetypes compared. To work around this, it can even be comboed with on-deletion effects that are paired up with retaliation as well at the same time. Having some form of recursion from the trash for the archetype can also be very helpful with situations when a specific card is needed. These are just a couple of concepts that I came up with, so let me know what ideas you guys might have and want to share. Now, if you haven't seen the last episode where I talked about Hexablaumon, then be sure to watch it right now. And as for the next episode, we're going to be talking about the Mamemon Digivolution line. So don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell to stay tuned if you're excited for that. As always, thank you so much for watching. You guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. See you next video. And this is Avault, signing out.